Alrighty, welcome to episode 6 of Beyond the Snap podcast. If this is your first time joining us, then please like, subscribe, and follow us for more because we're about to give y'all some very helpful insight into the college football world. And if you're a recurring viewer, then welcome back. Thank you for trusting in us and thank you for giving us your time. Alrighty, so to kick this off, we're going to give you our way too early top 25 for the end of season, so end of 2024 season. We're going to give you the 12 teams that are going to make the playoffs and each team that we believe is going to win each conference, whether that be SEC all the way to ACC. So to kick this off, I have Kieran, and Kieran's going to give you his run through first, and then he'll kick it to me, I'll kick it back to him, and we'll go like that. All right, Kieran.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go 25 to 20, kind of a little reverse order, build a little suspense. And kind of in thinking about this, it was really it's a unique challenge, I think, just because so much is changing, and there's somewhere in double digits. I think we're up to 13 or 14 now head coaching vacancies at the FBS level. Um, so it was a hard thing, and I think that this program at 25 is going to have a down to earth comeback season. I think that they will be. It's certainly a drop off, but how can you expect it when you've lost Nick Saban? And at 25, and I think it's probably the first time Alabama has been ranked 25th in I don't know how many years. It is Alabama, who have got it 25. So for 24, I have the good old Mustangs, so Southern Methodist University. Um, I think they had a really good season this year. I think they'll build on it. I think they will be the group of five team that does the best. And depending on how the playoff format works, they may just get a free shoe in into the playoff. I don't think they are one of the 12 best teams by any means, but yeah, I think that they will have a good season. I think they'll do similar to this year. Maybe win a bowl game, or depending on if they get into the playoff or not. I think it's really looking up. I think they've done really good things, especially with their defense. I think it's looking up for them. 23, I have USC. There have been some struggles at USC. Lincoln Riley has had some issues, particularly on the defensive side of the ball that we've talked about when we've talked USC previously on this podcast. But I think their defense will be better. I think adjustments will be made. I don't think it's a playoff caliber team, especially with losing Caleb Williams and others. Although there's proven to be, I think that production will be replaced. Caleb Williams is obviously a special player, but I think there'll be replacement and increased production there, and I think it'll be a good team. And I think it's another just kind of the step on the ladder up to hopefully bigger and better things if you are a USC fan. And at 22, I have a team that's been in the news a little bit lately, and we'll talk about that later, but I've got Iowa. I think they've done, they did a good job this year. Their defense was great. Their offense was pretty much non-existent. They've got some transfers in. They've got some new weapons, and hopefully they'll be able to have a good season. I think they're a good Big Ten team. I think they're going to struggle in the expanded Big Ten, where they have a lot more teams that are above them than below them, or more teams that are above them and below them than was before. And I think it's a big change for them, but I still think they'll do well. And at 21, I have Louisville. So Louisville kind of got disappointed in the ACC this year. They had a great season. They're losing a lot of key talent, but they're also gaining quarterback talent and offensive weapons that I think was their biggest problem. And while they're losing, some of their talent on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's still, a very good team. And I think it's a team that will continue to improve, and I think they'll do pretty well next year. And then at 20, I've got Kansas. So the Jayhawks have, they've struggled a little bit. They've had some issues. They beat Oklahoma this past season. I think they've had issues at quarterback, and I think if that consistency improves, they're a top 20 team, and that's why I have them where I have them. But kicking it back to you, Kirtan, for you to go 25 through 20.
Yeah, so first off, I actually have a surprise here. So I know Kieran mentioned that he has Alabama sneaking into that 25 spot. Well, I'm gonna get into this later, but let's just say I have Bama way higher on in the AP Top 25. So at my 25 is actually going to be SMU Mustangs. I think SMU has been a very solid team, especially these last two seasons. I believe they only had at least two losses this entire year. They played well, and both their losses, if I remember correctly, came from Big 12 teams, and that was the Oklahoma Sooners. And I want to say, uh, I think it was Oklahoma Sooners and Oklahoma State. I don't know if it was Oklahoma State. I think it was a Texas team. Oh, TCU, now I remember. But I think that they're still going to be a really solid team, and they're going to get back into those days where before they received the death penalty, they're going to be as good as they were then, and they're going to slowly build. I think all these Texas schools are doing really well at recruiting, at bringing in talent, and they're going to be a really top competitor. This is speaking for all the schools, including Texas, A&M, Tech, State, SMU. Well, we'll see in the future. Moving at 24, we have Iowa. Iowa, they have such a one-sided team. They have such a dominant defense, but then their scale is literally a dip down all the way down to offense, where they honestly have minimal talent, where they weren't able to do anything effectively, and that's why most of their games were always below 20 points. So if here's some insider knowledge, I don't know about Iowa next year, but I want to say if you ever bet on an Iowa game, always bet on the under. Um, Moving on to 23, I have Louisville. Louisville, we know, did really well this year. They came second to Florida State in the ACC. They weren't as shocking as I thought they would be against USC because USC was really able to take control. That new quarterback came in and he delivered. He looked like a really solid figure. And I think Louisville will still stick around in those 20s. I don't think they're going to improve much. I don't think they're going to decline that much. So I have them at 23. At 22 is I have the team that beat Louisville in a bowl game. This was USC. USC, of course, played without Caleb Williams in the bowl game, but when everyone thought, oh, Louisville's probably going to win, USC relied so heavily on Caleb Williams. Well, apparently that wasn't the case, as his backup quarterback played outstanding. I mean, he was throwing the ball really well, had great completion percentage, had a great touchdown to interception ratio. I don't believe he threw a touchdown, maybe one, but he had like four touchdowns on the day. He tied a school record that Caleb Williams had. It was just a phenomenal game to watch. And it does show that there's some upside to USC. I don't think it's going to come this season. I think it will come maybe 2, 3 years down the line. 21, I have Kansas. So this is something else I'm going to get into, but I might as well say it now. Kansas and Jalen Daniels has I think personally, he will be the Heisman winner of 2024. I think the way he plays is very dynamic. I feel like it's something we haven't seen since Lamar. I think he's very dual threat. He's a very improviser. And if he didn't get injured, I don't know what would have happened against Texas. I think it would have been a very close game, and I don't know if Texas would have won because it was a similar situation with Oklahoma. So with that being said, I say Kansas will be 21. And at 20, I have North Carolina State. I have NC State. I think NC State is one of my favorite teams personally. I love the chant. I love the dog. I love everything about them. But NC State, they always teeter in that zone. They've never been able to conquer competition. I remember they played a game against Notre Dame where I think they played well, but they didn't play to what we expected them to play. They're always a good competitor, but they never able to break into the top 20. And so for that reason, I'm going to have them sitting at 20 in at position 20. Kicking it back to Kieran, he's going to give you his 19 to 15. Kieran?
Yeah, so I think generally our rankings are pretty similar. There are some differences, as they're bound to be. But yeah, at 19, I've got a team that you mentioned and talked about that was your 20. I've got NC State. I think they're a great team. I think they're gaining. So what I think is going to happen is NC State has had a very good defense, headlined by Peyton Thorne, and he's gone to the draft. He's gone. He's done. He's headed to the NFL. But I think they're replacing a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. They've got a really great recruiting class coming in. Um, there's some guys you got to watch, especially. And I think it's not, there's no star headliner. There's no player that sticks out. But I think it's just a well rounded class. I think they're going to be able to bring some of those players in and bolster what they have. And I think it's going to be a good season for NC State in kind of this time of turmoil. a little bit more stability for them. So that's why I've got them at 19. At 18, I have Chris Kleinman's Kansas State. I rank them above Kansas just because I think Kansas State is a more gritty team. I think they're a team that just frankly has more gas than Kansas does, and Kansas had in the past. They've lost some games they probably shouldn't have. They certainly deserve to win the Texas game last year. Obviously, they're going to be without Will Howard, um, but I think that Avery Johnson is, I believe, the guy that he split time with this year. I believe that he will be a key player and a key part of that offense. And I think that, Kansas State in general is a very tough team. They're a very, very physical team. And I think they'll maintain that identity. And I think they have a chance to be a top dog in the Big 12. And then at 17, I have Oklahoma State. And really, the only reason, the easiest way to justify this and the easiest way to make sense of it is because they are going to have Ollie Gordon back. Um, he was the leading rusher with, I think, 1,764 yards this year for both Oklahoma State and in the FBS. He's been, dynamic. He's been great, except against Texas, and Texas is no longer there, right? So I think there's opportunity abounds for Oklahoma State. I think they're really going to emerge as one of the top dogs and in the Big 12, and I think that's just kind of going to be what dictates the Big 12 and what helps to, set the tone and set the headline. And then at 16, I have Miami. So I think Mario Cristobal is on the up. I think they've got a great recruiting class. They got DJ Uyunglele. Uh, sorry. They got Cam Ward. I am all of the transfer nonsense. Um, they've got, it's a dynamic team. And now I felt, if you had said we don't know who's going to get Cam Ward, I would have still felt confident putting Miami here. I think they're a fringe contender for the playoff. I think they're very much a team on the up. Um, they've got problems, but I think the class that was all freshmen that played for them this year will have matured and grown and strengthened. And with some great additions, I think, Miami is really going to be a force to contend with in the ACC. Um, and yeah, so above them, I've got Clemson. I think Cade Klubnik and crew are going to do better this year than they did last year. I think that Dabo Swinney is going to make the right changes and get them back on track and do what he has to at least increase their standing. I don't know if they're going to be, the huge favorite and a huge contender, but I think, I think they're up there. Um, and I think they're also another fringe playoff team. But Kirtan, what do you got?
Oh, yeah. Um, so for my 19th spot, I have Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State did phenomenal this season. They were the Big 12 runner-ups behind Texas, and I feel like they're still going to be such a dominant team. I know that they're going to have some lost at positions, but I feel like they're still going to be solid. Some things I wanted to point it out before I continue, though, is I want you to notice how we have majority Big 12, majority smaller conferences at the bottom rather than we have your SEC and Big 10 at the top. So I just want y'all to keep that in mind of how we're predicting that the AP is going to take favoritism to SEC, to Big 10, and how we're putting all these winners or potential really solid teams in Oklahoma and Kansas State at the bottom. And this is not our personal thing. This is our beliefs of what's going to happen in the rankings. So, like I was saying, Oklahoma State, they're going to be at 19. I think they're going to come really close. I think they're going to go to the Big 12 Conference Championship again, but they're going to fall short. I feel like these two teams that I'm going to say next, Kansas State, they're going to be interchangeable with Oklahoma State because I feel that 18th spot is going to be owned by whichever team wins the Big 12. And this is hard to say because the Big 12, it's going to be close. I feel like Kansas State's going to put up a fight. I feel like Oklahoma State's going to put up a fight. But in the end, it's going to be Kansas State. At 17, I have Florida State. Florida State, as we know, got snubbed. We know that they're such a great program. We know they're getting DJ Uyunglele. Well, here's the problem now. You lost a lot of starters to the draft. You lost Keon Coleman. You lost some of your interior guys. You're going to have a definite declining team. It's still yet to be determined if they're staying in the ACC. if they're leaving. So if they stay, which I think they might for this season, they are going to be not as dominant. I think they're going to fall off a little bit. I think the ACC is going to give favoritism to Clemson. And so for that reason, I have them at 17. At 16, I have Utah Utes. After losing Cam Rising, we didn't think they were going to be as good, which they weren't. I think they're still going to be on a rapid decline. I don't think they're going to be able to fit as well as they are in this new conference that they're in. And I think they're just going to be on a slowly decline. I think they're going to stay in like this middle area. And for Oklahoma, who is actually my 15th spot, this is because they're heading into a new SEC. They are the underdogs now for being the heavy favorites of the Big 12 to underdogs. I don't think they're going to fit well against these opponents. I don't think they're going to do as well as we think they are. And so for this reason, I'm going to have them at 15. I wish they were higher, but I don't think they will be. Kieran, what are your top 14 to top 10?
Yeah, so I've got some really interesting teams. This is kind of the first, big conflicts. So at 14, I have Tennessee. So this is kind of a little bit, I mean, it may surprise you. I've heard, rumblings from various sources that, Tennessee, a lot of people think they're not going to be a playoff contender, and I think they are. Um, I think the cutoff line for the playoffs is Miami. So I think all the way down to 16, any team could potentially get in the playoffs with enough chaos. Because remember, it is 12. It's not a 14 mindset anymore. Tennessee definitely has a chance with their new hotshot quarterback, Nico Amalieva. Um, and I think they've got a great chance. They got an improving team. I think Josh Heupel's going to get that squad right, and I think they'll be ready to go. And I think that playing in the new SEC, maybe they've got a bit of a leg up on at least Oklahoma. But they've got to me, a chance and a battle. There's a battle. There's a way they make into the playoffs, and I think that they will have a good season. And then at 13, I've got Oklahoma. I think that Oklahoma is going to have a good year. Probably not the best year. Definitely second fiddle to Texas. And the fact that I would consider even today that Oklahoma and Tennessee are two kind of upper middle of the pack SEC teams, and that they're ranked 13th and 14th kind of tells you about college football in terms of just how good the SEC is. But moving to 12, I've got Florida State. I think that they've lost Jared Verse and Patrick Payton, along with Keon Coleman and their quarterback Jordan Travis. And to me, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to replace all that, but I think it feels wrong to leave Florida State out of the playoff. So I have them in there at 12. I think they'll get in. I think they'll find a way. I think they will still be better than Clemson. I'm not, I think they will still be better than Clemson. I would lean toward them winning the ACC if they are still there. And to me, they've got a shot at making the playoffs, and I think they can make it happen with Mike Norvell and that squad. And then at 11, I have Utah. So Utah, they'll get Cam Rising back, barring another injury. They're moving to the Big 12, which is most definitely, to me, it's a smaller pond than the Pac-12 was last year. So to me, Utah is kind of the far and away favorites in the Big 12. I don't think a whole lot of teams can keep up with them. I think they do Kansas State better than Kansas State. I think they're going to be able to out physical Oklahoma State. So to me, they're the favorite, and I think they will have what is a very good year in their new little fish pond. Um, and at 10, I've got Penn State. And this was a hard ranking for me, but I think Penn State, they don't have a whole lot of turnover. I think James Franklin is making some needed changes, and I think Penn State has the chance to pick off some of the bigger teams potentially, like they always do every year. So I think this 10 range is pretty much right for them. So Kirtan, what do you got from I guess 14 to 10?
Alrighty, so at 14, I have who I'm predicting to be the winners of the ACC, and that's going to be the Clemson Tigers. Like Kieran said, this is because of the fact that I believe in Cade Klubnik. I've seen what he's done at the high school level. I know that doesn't translate to college, but I think for him being ranked number third quarterback in his class behind Quinn Ewers, who we know is an exceptional quarterback, I think that shows you his promise. That shows you that he is a good quarterback, and when he figures out how to play with the new scheme, with his new players in a new tactic, he will be a much better quarterback. And of course, I believe in Dabo. I think he's still one of the best coaches. And I think he's going to be a dominant force. So I see him just missing out of the playoffs at being at 14. I want to apologize first because I'm really stuffy. I have really bad allergies. So this is why I might sound like this. At 13, I have Tennessee under their new captain, essentially, the leader of their ship, the sailor, the captain of the team. And this is Nico Iamaleava. I'm so bad at pronunciations. Iamaleava. Yeah, Iamaleava. The reason I have Tennessee here is because Tennessee is playing in such a brutal SEC right now. They're not going to be as powerful. They're not going to be as strong. Uh, they lost good talent in the portal. I just don't see them being a overpowering team, a superstructure like Georgia, like Texas. So for this reason and this reason alone, I have uh, Tennessee falling at 13, just missing out. At 12 is where we see a Big Ten team. We see Penn State Nittany Lions. I think Penn State are on the up and up. I think that they're always a contender, especially in this new Big Ten. It's going to be harder for them. I think they're going to do much better. I think they're always sticking around, and I don't know if they're going to make it out the first round. I'll be honest, but I do see them being a dominant force, and for that reason, I have them at 12. At 11, I have your national championship winners in Michigan. Of course, this is going to be Michigan without J.J. McCarthy, without Blake Corum, without Jim Harbaugh. And so this could be a really, really depressed team almost. It's going to be really not. It's the word I'm looking for is not deflated, but it's going to be like de-energized. It's going to be uh not good. It's just going to be a bad feel locker room, especially because they don't want to repeat at TCU and how TCU season went this year. Uh, I still think they're going to be contenders. I think they're going to have a fight. I think they're going to be a little down, but that's what's going to build them. It's where you are right now. You use that to power through, and you're going to fight for the 11th seed. And I don't see them really missing playoffs. They're still a dominant force, whether or without J.J. McCarthy, without Blake Corum. And at 10, I have a really shocking one. I have Arizona. Now, Arizona, I know a lot of people don't see them being that good, but Arizona, they haven't lost that many players to the portal. I know their coach left, but I think they're still going to be a good team. I think those boys are banded together, and we've seen what they were able to do this season. I think they're going to be able to replicate that success, and they're going to fight for a top 10 seed. This is going to be Kieran, and he's going to give you his 9 to 5.
Yeah, just for the sake of irony, Arizona has just lost a four-star quarterback prospect um, to the portal who they had recruited. Desmond Williams is his name, and he will be transferring to Washington following his coach Jed Fish. Just a
It's all good.
little irony for you
It's
there.
all good. They're still number 10.
Uh huh. All right. So at 9, I have the Tigers. Not the Auburn Tigers, the LSU Tigers. And I think LSU is really poised to take, to kind of clean up the scraps of the SEC and scrape some of the carcass of the whale that was Alabama into its little tiger den there, and use it to create really what I think is going to be a good football team next year. I think they're a really good, a solid, just a solid football team. They're not going to be as explosive as they were this year on offense. I think they will get their defense right. I think that's the biggest thing. I think they're going to improve on defense. That's the biggest reason why I have them at 9. And while the offense will drop off, they've still got weapons, and they're always still going to have a good offense. And then at 8, I've got Notre Dame. So to me, I think Marcus Freeman, he's bringing in Riley Leonard to play quarterback for him. He's bringing in a lot of players, and he's just got a good class put together. And I think Notre Dame missed out this year. I think they fell short of expectations. But I think next year, I think they're going to do very well. I think being an independent much favors them to get into the 12-team playoff, even if it is a lower seed, because I think they can get in and, not perhaps play as strenuous of a schedule and still look good sitting at 10-2, 11-1 range and get in with the 8 seed. And at 7, I have Michigan. Um, Here's the deal. If Harbaugh leaves, I think the smart thing to do from their athletic department and the smart thing to do is to elevate Sharon Moore to head coaching status. I believe that's what they will do. I think all signs would point there. I don't think there's any reason to go on a goose chase. You've got your bird right there. I think, he's ready to go. I think that there is a culture there. There is a program there, and that's what won them a national championship, and that's why I think they're not going to fall off that much. I think they're going to have issues, especially with the team from Ohio. But I think that they're still a very strong team. They're still a very good team. They're still going to be a very powerful team. And I think there is much less of a chance than a lot of other teams, but I think there's still a chance that they repeat and that the strength of their program is able to show through, especially in what will be a very long season with the new playoff. And then at 6, I've got Missouri. So Missouri had an amazing season this year. Eli Drinkwitz, they're doing well, and I think they're going to be better. They're going to lose Cody Schrader, which is really unfortunate because I believe that this past season he was the best running back in college football. But they are not losing their quarterback. They are not losing a lot of receiving talent. They're not going to lose Luther Burden. They've got more talent coming in on the defensive side of the ball in terms of recruiting. They've gotten some good guys through the portal, and I think Missouri is going to be a very good team. And I'm really excited to see what they can do in the playoffs at that number 6 slot. And then at 5, I have Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss. And I think that Ole Miss, they've got the number 1 portal class with Walter Nolan, among others. And they've been able to, I think, elevate themselves. I think Ole Miss has gone up a tier status and program. So has Missouri, but I think Ole Miss is the biggest, tier status and program. They've gotten over that hump. I think they're going to be in the playoffs. I think they're going to do well in the playoffs. I do not know. I doubt that they will win the national championship, but I think they will do very well in the playoffs. I think they will have a great season. And then at number 4, I have a team that kind of got kicked in the face this year. And I'm just going to go ahead and do 4 so we can do the top 3, make it a little special. But I've got Dan Lanning's Oregon. And to me, Oregon's a very good team. They're retaining a lot of talent. They're bringing in new talent. I think they'll be a great team next year, and look for the Ducks to make a splash in the playoffs. Kirtan?
Okay, so for my number 9, I have the exact same you did. I have the Tigers, and that is the ones from Louisiana. LSU, they're a dominant team. They are always a SEC contender. Ever since that Joe Burrow era, they've always been such a good team. They always give fights. They always put up fights. And more often than not, they'll end up winning. They'll be a very tough team. Of course, they're losing their quarterback in Jane Daniels, who's arguably a top 5 pick. They're losing their best wide receiver, Malik Neighbors. And so it really comes down to the fact that are they still able to fight? Are they still able to fire on all cylinders? Which we know they are able to. They were able to go from Joe Burrow to Jalen Daniels. So we know that they're going to be pretty good. I feel like they're going to bounce back. They're always going to be a playoff fighting team from now on out. 8. This is the one where Kieran had at number 25. From Kieran having the last ranked team, I have them being number 8. And of course, if you don't know by now, I'm talking about the Crimson Tide. I'm talking about their new coach, Kalen DeBoer. I'm talking about that new program, who is technically under fire and is kind of getting ripped apart by the portal. But we will get into that later. All I want to say is for Bama, who's my number 8, they're Bama. I know how Kieran just talked about his number 7, I believe, was Michigan, and how Michigan has built off of that culture. Well, Bama is literally the definition of culture. They have winning culture. They've won basically every single championship, or they've fought for every single championship in the last decade. they had the greatest coach in the world, and I bet you that Nick Saban's gonna still his traditions, his ideas are gonna still be implemented into each of his players, still to this day, even under new management. And I think Caleb DeBoer will still be able to replicate Nick Saban's success and Nick Saban's ideas, Nick Saban's whole go at like coaching. And so for this reason, I have the Crimson Tide falling to 8. At 7, I have your Fighting Irish, Notre Dame. And the reason I have them at 7 is because, like Kieran said, which I think is one of the biggest highlights, is that they are an independent school. Meaning they don't have to risk anything going on in the conference games. They don't have to risk a chance for them to drop out of the playoffs in general. As long as they have a solid season, 11-1, 10-2. If they go 12-0, hallelujah. Whereas that's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to be 12-0, 11-1. And I think because of the fact that they're not going to play in a bowl game, or not in a conference championship game, that's going to elevate them. That's going to cement their place into the playoffs because you won't drop out. You won't be as high as you want to be, but you'll still be in the middle, and you'll still get a good fight out of whoever is. I believe 7 plays 10 or 11. I think you'll still have a good competition. I think you'll be favored no matter what. At 6, I have the other Tigers. I got the Missouri Tigers. Like Kieran said, it's so disappointing that they're losing arguably my number 2 running back in the nation in Cody Schrader. I still believe that Blake Corum was number 1 because
Casual take.
if you saw what happened in the playoffs, you have to give it to him. Give him his roses, which he earned literally in the Rose Bowl. Uh, so for that reason, I gotta give Missouri number 6. They played outstanding against Ohio State. Granted, Ohio State also didn't start lots of their players, but Missouri went all out. Missouri, that's part of their culture. We're going to play everybody. We're all going to play. We're all going to be active. We're all going to win. And so for that reason, they're going to build a really, really sleeper team. I want that to be known. I think they're going to be a sleeper team to win the SEC and to go far into the playoffs. Yeah. And so just so y'all know, Missouri, keep an eye on them. Number 6. Number 5, a team that is another sleeper team, but more outgoing, more showing, more shiny. This is the Rebels, Ole Miss Rebels. They cleaned up in the transfer portal. I believe they're the number 1 team in the transfer portal. Number 2, they did insanely good in the transfer portal. They also did really good this season. Uh, the Rebels are going to they're going to have a big impact on this new playoff. They're going to have a new impact on the SEC because now with Bama being dethroned, meaning losing their coach, they're next up. So they're going to be the next team you're going to be looking at, and Ole Miss is going to sneak into your 5 spot. Number 4 is a team that we all believe are going to be top 4, maybe top 4, top 6, but this is going to be Ohio State. Ohio State, what more can be said about them? Bringing in another top class, having the best skill positions, honestly, in the entire world, I believe. I know they bring in a transfer quarterback, but Ohio State is a team you never count out. I don't know how Ryan Day is going to be able to play against like Michigan or teams like that in the game. He's yet to beat them, so it's going to be close. I think though they're going to always rise up to the occasion. They're going to be a top tier team. And so those are my top 4. Kieran, hit us with the top 3.
Yeah, so the to me, I'm gonna start off with top 3, and my third team was your fourth team, and it's Ohio State. So Ohio State is they're gonna be special this year. I mean, there's no other way to say it. They're going to be special. They're very, very talented. I think that there is, if you were a Buckeyes fan, there is more than a little reason to be hopeful. There's a lot of reason to be hopeful. Um, you've got Jeremiah Smith coming in that recruiting class. And I would also like to mention that Julian Sayin, who has left Alabama, he made a 1 week appearance and that is now gone. Is Ohio State is favored to land him right now, and I believe they will land him, and that would be huge for Ohio State to have another quarterback in the barrel. That's more long term, but I think it shows kind of the hope and what's happening in Ohio State. They're returning. I believe they're returning Chip Trainum. They're going to add a huge running back threat from Ole Miss. They're going to just, to me, Ohio State is going to be the power tour, revenge tour team. Um, they've got a lot of experience on that roster. They've done, I think, very well for themselves. Sure, they lose Kyle McCord, but I think they get an upgrade. I think that they've really just put together a solid team through the portal, through the class. And they've got Quinshon Judkins. Like, they have probably the best backfield in college football, which is the most insane thing I've ever said about a team from Ohio. Um, and they're going to be physical. They're going to be really good on defense. I believe Eichenberg is returning at linebacker. They've got a bunch of defensive talent that was so good this year that's going to be back again. Um, and to me, they're the team to beat in the Big Ten, and they may be the team to beat to win the title. They're going to be explosive with Jeremiah Smith and in the passing game, and they're going to be absolutely lights out with their backfield and just their sense of their ability and their capability. And to me, that's what's going to put them over the top. And at 2, I have the Texas Longhorns. So to me, Texas has got some great portal additions. They've got Isaiah Bond. They've got Amari Nyblack, who I thought was a really good tight end last year to replace Jachavian Sanders and Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. They've got a great class coming in. My one concern is replacing the skill that they had along the defensive line, but their secondary is going to be better. They've got great edge rushers coming back, and Ethan Burke and Baron Sorrell. I think that Texas they're a really good team. They're not being slept on now. Everybody's saying they're back, and I think this may be their best chance to win a championship since last year or this past season. But it'll be their best chance to win a championship since last season, which I know doesn't sound all that bold, but I think they got a great chance to win. And at number 1, I have to put, you haven't seen them anywhere else on the list. There's only really one team you could put here, and that is South Dakota State. No, I'm kidding. It's Georgia. So it's got to be, to me, Georgia, they've been picked apart a little bit in the portal. They're paying the price of success, but they've got a number 1 recruiting class, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Huge amounts of talent everywhere, too many players to speak of. They did not get Caleb Downs. He went to Ohio State. We'll talk about that later. Another reason I'm so high on the Buckeyes. But to me, there is really, the fight is going to occur kind of in that early season game at Texas. And that's when we'll know how the SEC is going to shake out. That's when we'll know how most of it's going to go down. Is Sark or Smart? Which one of the Saban tutelage of the Saban from the Saban tree is going to be the best? And Georgia, to me, they're very talented. They've got their quarterback returning. They're losing Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, which is big, but they'll have other people. They'll have other weapons. They'll be physical. I think they'll be a good team. So we'll do, more in-depth breakdowns of kind of probably the playoff teams later. But that's my top 25. And Kirtan, go ahead and hit us with your top 3.
All right, so first, everyone take note that Kieran just said that Georgia will probably beat Texas for the number 1 spot. And if
I said they were ranked ahead of them. I said nothing about them
so,
beating.
you don't think we'll beat y'all in the regular season, which will basically indefinitely give us the 1 seed.
All right.
Okay, yeah, well, just everyone keep that in mind. Number 3 is UT. The reason I have them at number 3 instead of number 2 is because I think there is a team that is a sleeper in the Big Ten. Mainly, the main reason here is because I don't know what the SEC championship is going to look like. Based on my predictions, it's going to be Georgia versus Texas. And in my prediction, I have Georgia winning. I think that Texas, they'll get close. I think Texas, they're going to still fight. They're still going to be a dominant team. But they're not going to be able to break into the top 2 seeds. They're going to be in their familiar spot at number 3, number 4, like last season. So I think they're going to stay put. They're going to be at number 3. The team that I'm referring to is better, and I think is going to win the Big Ten. is Oregon. The reason I think Oregon is going to break the Big Ten is because they have two of the most lethal quarterbacks going into their school. And this is Dylan Gabriel, this is DJ Moore. And I promise you, this entire offseason is just going to be a QB battle, which is like the saying goes, iron sharpens iron. And so, for this reason, I think no matter who starts is going to be a very good leader, a very good captain, and they're going to lead the Ducks to win the entire shebang for the Big Ten. And then at number one, no bias, honestly, no bias. Yeah, the Dogs by a lot. Like it's not even close. Georgia, we're gonna win the SEC. We're gonna be a dominant team. We're gonna run up. We're such a physical team that no matter what happens, we're just gonna destroy. We're gonna go in there. We'll hit you with the run game. Carson Beck's returning. He's gonna hit you with the pass game. It's gonna be a lethal weapon. Texas DKR, you better be ready because it's about to turn red. With that being said, Georgia's your number one team, and that wraps up both of our AP Top 25s. So, since we want to get the show on the road for y'all, and we don't want y'all waiting up on us, and just tune in, please tune into the entire show. But we want to speed this up for y'all. We're gonna go over our predictions for the national championship winner and all the conference winners. So I'll go first. Starting with the Heisman, like I said, I think it's gonna be Jalen Daniels for reasons that he's just a great player. I think he's gonna thrive, especially in the new Big 12, where he doesn't have to worry about top tier competition. And this is gonna be a really competitive division, especially between three teams: Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Kansas. Moving on, we have ACC. This is gonna be a Clemson versus Florida State. I feel. Florida State, I don't think they're going to produce as well as they did last year. Of course, last year they had Jordan Travis, who they could rely on. They didn't win with Jordan Travis, but they had Jordan Travis nonetheless, who brought them to the who brought them to the ACC championship. They had uh, Keon Coleman. They had all these top tier players, and I know that they are getting DJ Uyunglele, but I feel like that team is going to fall off a little bit, and by a little bit I mean they're going to drop to 17. I think they're still going to be a good team. I wonder how they're going to fit if they get out of the ACC. But as of the time being, I have Clemson versus Florida State, and this is where Dabo Swinney wins another ACC championship. So Clemson wins. Big 12, I have Kansas I have Oklahoma State versus Kansas State. This game is, like I said, is almost going to be a fight for 18-19, and I think no matter what, whoever wins, it's only going to be a what do you call it, a 1C differential. And in this game, I have Kansas State winning by a really close score, but I think they're going to win by 3. And your Big 12 winners will be Kansas State. Big 10 will see Ohio State versus Oregon, in which the Ducks will be able to fight off the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're going to be really lethal in the pass game. Just an overall great team, and they're going to be really, really dominant, and they're going to show you why they are Oregon, why the Ducks are back after Mariota. And SEC, you have the big dog winning, average day. The average day, I think we're gonna get back to our title ways. There's no Bama to stop us anymore, especially without Nick Saban. And so I think Georgia will end up winning the SEC. And with that being said, I think your national championship winner will be the Georgia Bulldogs. I think we're just too good of a team. I think we're bringing in a lot of talent. I think we have the best class. We have really good quarterback. I think Carson Beck is going to show next year. Just a really dominant defense, and I think we're gonna stifle anyone in our way. Kieran?
All right, so yeah. So starting off with Heisman, this is a really hard one to predict. I kind of didn't want to do it, but I'm gonna give you kind of a range of candidates just because A, I'm lazy, and B, um, I want all of the credit. And if I give you 10 names and one of them wins it, well, look, I've done a good job, haven't I? So to me, there's a couple of contenders. I think Cam Ward is a contender. He's very dynamic depending on how he plays. I think that there are, a lot of different contenders. I think Carson Beck is certainly a contender depending on how well he does at Georgia. If he can improve on how he did this year, I think that's a great performance from him. I think it's potentially Heisman worthy, depending on how he comes up in those big moments. I think Quinn Ewers is a contender. And what you're talking about this is they're all quarterbacks. And when I give you my next contender, I think a lot of you are going to be shocked. I think you may be surprised. But to me, there is a potential. There is what to me is a non-zero chance. I think there is no question that come the end of the season, there is a large chance that he will deserve it. Whether or not he gets it or not is not up to me. I do not have the Heisman vote. But I think there's a potential that Caleb Downs could win the Heisman. That's right, I said it. Caleb Downs. He's an all-world type talent. He's crazy good if you just watch him. If you're a defensive guy, go watch his film. Go watch his tape. The way he moves, his ability to break on the ball, his tackling, just everything. Very solid fundamentals. Very good player. Very talented player. And I think in combination with Eichenberg on that Ohio State defense, he's got a chance to win it. Eichenberg might have an outside chance at it, but other than that, that's just a couple of defensive guys that I think might win it. And I think Caleb Downs is probably just the favorite there. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of my Heisman prediction. I'll make a better one later. But to me, I think Caleb Downs has a real shot. I think he's an all-world player. I think anyone who's sleeping on him and anyone who doesn't think that transfer is going to be one of the most important things retroactively to have gone down in college football is big. So, moving on to my conference kind of predictions. So yeah, I'm going to start out with the ACC. I think it'll be Clemson versus Florida State. To me, they've got, it's kind of a bit of a back and forth. But I think Clemson will get it done. I think I've ranked Florida State ahead of them just because I think they will do better in the playoff, but I think Clemson's going to win the championship. And then for the Big 12, I've got Utah. I have Utah over Oklahoma State in a championship game. I think Utah is just going to be much better. I think they're going to be the best team in the Big 12. I think they're going to have a bit of a bounce back year. In the Big 10, I have Ohio State beating Oregon. I think that, Ohio State is crazy good. I mean, I've already talked about them. And I think that that's going to be a big deal. And I think they will beat Oregon, but I think Dan Lanning certainly has a shot at it. And, of course, he's going to have a shot at it. So the SEC. So Texas and Georgia seem poised to play twice. I think they'll split the games. I think Texas will win one and Georgia will win one. So it's kind of a 50-50 as to who wins the conference championship. But I think that, Georgia has a history with conference championship issues to people close to Nick Saban. And I think Texas is going to win it. I'm not sure if that'll cost them the 1 seed or not. But I think they'll split the games. And I think Texas will win the championship game for the SEC. And now, as far as the national championship, so this was hard to predict, and this is going to probably surprise some of you. It is not Georgia. It is not an SEC team. I think Ohio State will win the championship. Just from the sheer standpoint of if they win the Big Ten, and then they're on a very high seed, 2-3, somewhere in there, Georgia will not have seen anything like what Ohio State is, except for, maybe you could say Texas, good offense, physical, good run attack. But to me, there's not, there's going to be, Ohio State's going to be more explosive than Texas, I think. I think Texas will be very explosive, but I just think Ohio State, it's a different kind of football. It's Big Ten football. And I think that, whatever SEC team that Ohio State plays, while, there's obviously a potential for them to win, they're obviously probably going to be the more talented team, although Ohio State is extremely talented. But I just think Ohio State will get it done. I think that Georgia or Texas or whoever it may be, I think it'll be an SEC team, will not have seen the caliber of football that Ohio State can play. Just not the caliber, but the style too. To me, it's like playing, if you're Georgia, I have to play against a bunch of, little guns, right? It's one team, but it's all little guns. And Ohio State is just this huge, massive, explosive, powerful, one shot. They're going to give it their best. And I think they can win. I think Caleb Downs knows how to play against Georgia. And I think he's going to, he's played against Georgia. They've got that experience. They have some of those SEC transfers, and to me, I think they'll get Georgia, or even will probably get Texas too, because they've Caleb Downs has also played Texas, right? And to me, that'll be the decision maker, and I think Ohio State will win the championship. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my take. The
That's
Georgia
crazy.
homer is not happy.
That's crazy. False information is what he's giving y'all. Very false. And we'll see what happens in exactly a year from now. Um, so we're gonna speed through these season rankings again. Our favorite segment. If you joined us in prior episodes, we love talking about these. And so I'll give you the first one. The first one we got is the Tar Heels, and this is North Carolina. I wanted to see more out of them this season with Drake May, but they didn't, and they had really bad losses. And for one example, I have Virginia Tech, who they were able to beat in previous seasons, but they just didn't. They looked like a shell of themselves, and we expected more from them, but they really didn't deliver. And so for this reason, I'm gonna give Florida State or North Carolina, my bad, a 4 out of 10. Kieran, what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of similar. I think they should have done better. They had horrible, horrible losses. To me, that kind of governs their season, and that governs why I'm giving them a 3 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay, and moving on, we got Notre Dame. We got the Fighting Irish. They improved slightly against what last year they played Marshall and had a loss to Marshall, which was really sad. But this year they only had losses to Power Five teams, and by that I mean like they had a loss to Ohio State. They had good losses essentially. I know there's no such thing as a good loss, but it was a good loss against tough teams, and they're showing much upside, especially with getting Riley Leonard now. And so I think this season was an 8, and I think they're going to improve even more.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I think Notre Dame had a good season. I don't think it's quite worthy of an 8. I think it's a 7. I think football Jesus did not work his magic. Um, it didn't go super well for them, but I think that they've had a decent season. They faced adversity in the past. They know what they're doing. They'll bounce back. They'll get right. And yeah, so that moves us on to um, the next team. Um, there's going to be Oregon State. So they had a good season this year. Nearly beat Washington, lost to Oregon. I thought they were good. I thought DJ Uyunglele played all right. I thought they played. It was a commendable performance, especially out of Jonathan Smith. They're losing their head coach, but I think it was a good season. So for me, it's got to be a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah. And for Oregon State, for me, so I said that they are always a really good competitor, especially in the Pac-12 where they played. They did really good. Especially they had DJ Uyunglele transfer in. They played great. And I know I'm just repeating the same things over and over again, but the reason I'm doing this is because I think Oregon State stalled out a little bit. I don't think they're going to be able to return to the glory that they had these last 2 seasons where they were fighting for the Pac-12. I think they slowed down, they've stalled out, and now they're going to head downwards for a little bit and before they come back up. And so for this reason, I have Oregon State getting a 5. Next we got SMU, so Southern Methodist. Only 2 losses, and only 2 losses came from Big 12 schools, and I mentioned this previously. This was Oklahoma and TCU. Uh, They did really well, and I believe we both predicted them to break the top 25 this year. Uh, SMU, small school from Texas, but they're making big moves, and for that reason, they got an 8.
Yeah, so they got kind of robbed out of, I thought, that New Year's Six. I think it should have been them over Liberty. Um, and to me, they did well. They had a pretty tough schedule for a Group of Five team. They're not on the same caliber as Power Five football, but they can't really be expected to be. They're doing really well in recruiting. And I think SMU is a team to watch, but I think it's got to be a 9 out of 10 for last year, just for how well they did.
Yeah.
And so next we're gonna move on to TCU, and they dropped off a lot. I mean, they lost a lot of production, but I think that they're still, there's something to be salvaged. I think they'll get better. I think they had a really great season the year before last, but I think it frankly, I expected better from them. So it's going to be a 4 out of 10 for me.
Okay, so for TCU, the way I'm gonna put this to y'all is that they had the craziest fall off of all time. I mean, you literally fought for a national championship. You beat Michigan in a playoff game last season, and your only loss came to a really solid Kansas State team. Now, I know this is going to be wild. I know this is going to be a crazy game to watch, but or a crazy team to watch, my bad. But I think that TCU will not be able to recover. I think they're not going to be able to do as well. I don't think there's anything left to salvage. And so, based off of what we saw last year compared to this year, it has to be a point 0.5 to a 1, honestly. Moving on, we have Troy. So, for Troy, they had back-to-back dominating wins in the Sun Belt, and they're looking really strong as a team. I think their defense is coming into play. I think they're going to be just a good team, a really good group of five team. And so for this reason, I got Troy being a number 7.
All right, yeah, I gotta agree with you about Troy. Um, I think they're a good team. I think that continue to improve, even though they have had their head coach poached, which is a really great rhyme. I'm going to use that more often. But yeah, to me, last season's got to be an 8 out of 10. I think they're improving. They're getting better. Um, they've had their issues and they've had some problems. They had some, unfortunate losses. But I think that, it's great. And next, we're going to move on to the University of Tulane, the Green Wave. I thought they also did really well. Um, they unfortunately lost in their title game, and then had a rough go of it in the bowl. But to me, Tulane, they had a really great season. I think they did well. I think they're another good, solid top group of five team, and they're gonna get an 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Kieran here. Back-to-back phenomenal years for the Waves. Tulane, they're really turning the boat around since 2021, where they had like, I believe, 8 losses, 8 or 9 losses. They're really turning around. They were able to stay competitive against Ole Miss this last season, and so they're going to be a good team. And based off of the performance on last year, the year prior, and just how the team's going, I have to give them an 8. Moving on to UTSA. I mean, this season they had a really bad, well, I guess you can't really say bad loss, but a loss to Houston and a loss to Army. So this year wasn't going to be as good as it was last year, and they weren't able to replicate success. For me, this is going to be a 6. Good.
Yes, I think UTSA did well. I think they've got some dynamic players, one of which is going to Texas. Um, but I think they did well. But I gotta say, it's not as good as they have been. I think they're still a good group of five team, but yeah, it's got to be 5.5 from me. So next we're gonna move to a little bit more transfer chaos, and I'm gonna talk about some of this more and some coaching talk more on the jump with me, myself, and I. Which is a little video series. We both have one. Please watch. It's very entertaining. And if you like it, please also subscribe. A little shameless plug there because you don't have ad reads. Um, very lucky. So Ohio State, as we've talked about, was able to get Caleb Downs to transfer from Alabama. And Caden Proctor, their starting left tackle, who has struggled a lot in pass protection. I think he was, if it's possible, too strong, too big, very physical and dominant, but really struggled in pass protection and allowed a lot of sacks. Is transferred to Iowa. And in general, Nyblack is gone, Isaiah Bond is gone, which is a direct result of Saban retiring, as he has said himself. Bama's getting a little torn up. And what are your thoughts on kind of all of these transfers?
Yeah. So Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State hasn't been that bad, especially with what do you call it, with transfer players leaving, because I think they're still building a program. I believe Emeka Ukuba, I believe he's staying for the next season. I don't think he declared for the NFL draft. So he'll be staying. And I believe that entire team is just going to be loaded next season. That's why you and me both have them as a top seed, like for the playoffs and to win it all, really. Um, like you said with Caden Proctor to Iowa, this is just talking about a really, really solid offensive line player. And he's going to be a big help for Iowa's offense, as Iowa's offense has really been dimmed behind their defense and really hasn't been able to generate anything. So I think Iowa, again, another team you got to watch in the Big Ten, but I don't think they're going to be successful this year. I think Iowa's going to grow into a better team. Sooner or later, they'll be fighting again for Big Ten. Um, and like you said, this is a direct correlation. Why did Caden Proctor leave? Well, this is the Saban effect. I know I've discussed this in a previous episode of mine. Another plug. Um, go watch my individual series because we both need to get views and we both need to build this channel up. So that's really the gist of it. So this is what I was just saying. I was talking about how Saban leaving is going to be putting a really big chain a reaction on the entire program. Some people aren't going to agree with Kalen DeBoer's new plays, new tactics, and this might dim some players' lights. And so that might have been a main reason why Isaiah Bond left and is heading to Texas. And so, like I said, Bama's getting torn up. Uh, then there's a lot of guys from Washington leaving, and people are landing a lot of Washington players. Prediction is Washington is going to be the next TCU, is my belief. I think Washington's going to fall off, especially with the loss of Kalen DeBoer. I think they're going to lose lots and lots of really top tier players. And so for that reason, I have TCU, or I have Washington playing like TCU and ending up the same familiar position that TCU is in right now. And like I said earlier, with why I put Arizona at number 10, it's because not many people are leaving. Even though their coach, I believe, is left, all the players, they're gelling together. They're wanting to build this program back, and they're going to be a top tier team in their conference next year. Kieran, your thoughts?
Yeah, they have lost some talent, but they haven't lost a lot at Arizona. I think that the Bama. I think there's some interesting times ahead for Bama again. Please listen to my individual series. I will talk more about this. You'll get unfiltered, just me if you don't like Kirtan, and if you don't like me, then go listen to just Kirtan. It's perfect. Um, so some of the kids from Washington are headed down to Bama, following their head coach. And some of the kids from Arizona are kind of creating this almost triangle, the transfer triangle of college football. The craziness is starting to die down a little. There's not a whole lot of open coaching slots. Of course, if Michigan, if Harbaugh goes, then that'll reopen it all again. But to me, we're kind of really segueing into the off season, and this is our first what I would call a off season podcast, really, because we've been able to talk about next year. Um, God forbid, we've been able to talk about new things happening, and not things to happen, not things that have happened. And I think it's been it's been a really great episode. We just wanted to close with some of this transfer talk. And Kirtan, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think that, like Kieran said, we're going to be moving into the off season. It's going to be a lot of really behind the scenes. We'll probably keep the episode shorter as there won't be as much to talk about, but hopefully that will be better for both you and us, as there'll be less editing on our end, and it'll be more entertainment for y'all, as y'all will be able to see the entire episode in its entirety in a shorter segment. That's it for me, Kieran.
Yeah, please subscribe. And please go listen on Spotify. You're doing the dishes, headed to the gym, doing whatever. Please go listen on Spotify. Please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify. It's free. It is completely free for you. You just get some great content. You get to listen to us. You get to hear the college football takes, and you get to emphatically disagree with us and email us at beyondthesnapfootball@gmail.com if you feel that we are in fact off of our rocker, crazy, insane, or any other adjective you choose to use. Yes, but thank you for listening. Have a great day, and goodbye. See you on the next episode.
Alrighty.